President Trump has hit the ground running. He's been on a warpath with Muslims, asylum seekers, Mexico and Iran, and refuses to accept opposing voices, firing those who defy him. The Muslim/refugee ban caused chaotic, worrying scenes, detaining a 5-year-old Iranian child at a U.S. airport whom the White House says was a security risk. Allies are targets too, such as the Australian Prime Minister, who was scolded for a deal on resettlement of asylum seekers detained in offshore camps. With protests growing and his supporters being shouted down, Trump has found a cult following. Is American society ever more polarized? We discuss this and a lot more in this edition of the debate with me, Waqar Rizvi. Our guests for this debate are former American intelligence linguist Mr. Scott Rickard, who is joining us live from Tampa. And we're also joined by Congressional Defense Policy Advisor Mr. Frederick Peterson, who is joining us live from New York. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. Mr. Peterson, how symbolic of his leadership style do you think it is that Trump is seeking to withhold funding from UC Berkeley over that violent protest against the right-wing Trump supporter, Milo Yiannopoulos?
Well, I think it is very indicative of his leadership style, and that is an affirmative, hands-on, principle-oriented response to violence that is encouraged, in some cases cultivated, and aided and abetted by people in positions of authority that are have a higher responsibility to those who attend their institutions to provide a safe environment for them. This was certainly not done at Berkeley, where windows were smashed, fires were set, vandalism was done broad and wide, windows of businesses smashed out as well as cars burned. This was orchestrated street chaos. And to think that one should just sit back and allow that, tolerate that, the reason why largely Donald Trump was elected was because people had a confidence that he would respond to this type of behavior. To say that he has provoked this type of behavior is not true at all. These people are very frustrated. In most cases, they are paid agitators, street rabble, literally, that are have nothing better to do with their time than to create confusion and chaos. We saw them in the Occupy movement. Just listless, lost young people meandering around with no objective, no goal in life, and being propped up as street monkeys with the people that are manipulating them and attempting to create some sort of music when all they're creating is the music of cacophony and of chaos.
Okay, Mr. Peterson, let me just get Mr. Rickard's reaction. I'll come back to you after that.
Harming, it is
Mr. Rickard, go ahead. I know you had a reaction. You were making an expression to indicate that. Go ahead, Mr. Rickard.
I'm sure.
Well, you know, I absolutely agree with Mr. Peterson. The violence is just absolutely uncalled for. To say that it's mostly paid for, I think that's pure speculation. Obviously, there are a lot of disenchanted individuals out there. I certainly don't condone the violence. I guarantee you that the Berkeley University, the college out there, does not also condone the violence. In fact, that's what Donald Trump was insinuating, and I think that's what I hear Mr. Peterson insinuating. I think that if he would be happy to call the dean of schools out there, the dean of schools would agree with me 1,000% that as a university in the United States, he personally does not condone violence at his university. So I think that's one of the assumptions that's being made. And to threaten federal funding, I do not believe that that shows any kind of any type of maturity. It's absolute immaturity from an incredibly childish president who reacts in a very Twitter-minded way. I have to look on Twitter to figure out what my president's positions are. I mean, this is actually one way a good thing, because I realize realize how insane his positions are. But in another way, it's bad because obviously this is no way to run a country on 140 characters in reaction mode. So unfortunately, I disagree on Mr. Peterson on the concept of a responsible reaction by the President of the United States, but I absolutely agree with him that the violence is totally uncalled for. Now, when it comes to Occupy and Tea Party and other events that I have attended, I will tell you that there's some incredibly disruptive individuals at both of those. But at the same time, I've met some incredibly intelligent people at these rallies. I've met Gareth Porter, a fantastic writer in the United States. I would really recommend that Mr. Peterson follow Gareth Porter. I've met one of the most prominent Buddhist monks, Bhikkhu Bodhi, at the Occupy event in the Freedom Plaza right on in downtown Washington, D.C. So I would actually disagree with you that everyone there is an agitator. Obviously, there are some people that I met there that I absolutely did not resonate with, but certainly there were a few people that I did. So at the end of the day, you know, this characterization on both sides, unfortunately, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party shows the immaturity not only of the party leaders, but of the party followers. And that's what we've run into in this country.
Okay,
There's a bunch of followers that follow a bunch of individuals that are very immature.
Mr. Rickard. Mr. Peterson, not that I want to take away from that UC Berkeley issue, but as President Trump always is, he's been quite busy. So we also wanted to talk about, obviously, his call with the Australian Prime Minister, which can be categorized as disastrous, to say the least, because at some point he put the phone down, seemingly, halfway through the conversation. That didn't go very well. He was reacting, as you said, to the deal that Obama had put in place, that is to resettle asylum seekers from those offshore detention camps, Australian detention camps, that is. How do you think that went?
Well, I don't think it went well. It didn't go well because the plan was flawed ab initio. From its very beginning, the deal made by then President Obama is going to be revisited. The audacity to say that you are holding people in settlement camps in order to export them to someone else's country. You agreed to take them in. You should agree, you know, to actually do what must be done to have the full responsibility of that decision. It was highly flammable conversation, and that flammable conditions on both sides apparently caught fire. But the position that Mr. Trump has taken, President Trump now has taken, is entirely reasonable. And we should note that 58% of the American people are well in support of him and in support of his decisions here. And the mischaracterization of what he has done, of this temporary delay from 5 countries that, incidentally, were countries identified by then President Obama, not by Donald Trump, enabling between 85 and 90% of the Muslim world. This had zero effect on whatsoever. This is done entirely responsibly. The Australian tete-a-tete between the two leaders there was
Mr. Pearson, you'll have to allow me to come in here because you've gone through a lot there, and I wanted to ask you a couple questions, in fact, but I'll just ask you one follow-up if you allow me. You said that this, what many people are calling Muslim ban, I'm sure you've seen that is the hashtag that is trending about this issue. It's being called a Muslim ban. Right. You're saying this was handled responsibly, but then we do have, and I'm sure you've seen those pictures of that 5-year-old Iranian child handcuffed, and there are pictures, there's proof out there. He was handcuffed at Dulles Airport for a number of hours. Sean Spicer defends this, saying that this child was a security risk, or may have been a security risk. It's okay to do that to a child. Mr. Peterson, is that responsible?
Well, I don't know the situation that you're referring to, but I do know that 5-year-old children especially, and others that are entirely innocent, can be used as props by nefarious actors behind the scenes in order to create a public image. Now, I am sure that child, 5 years old, was not traveling alone. We don't understand, it hasn't been revealed the reasoning for this, what happened, if it happened, how it happened, what were the conditions under which it happened, with whom he was traveling, where he was going, and where he was actually coming from, or the environment from which he was coming. And yet it can make very good window dressing, and yet we need to get behind the window and find what the true facts are that are provoking this behavior.
Okay, Mr. Rickard, what is your view on how responsibly or not Donald Trump has handled this Muslim ban?
Well, I think one of the key things that I'd like Mr. Peterson and the rest of the country to understand is that when you're looking at quote-unquote refugees and individuals who are seeking asylum in the United States, there's a myriad of reasons behind it, but the underlying root cause is tremendous amount of imperialistic warfare that the Americans have imposed on these underlying countries. I mean, all that's really happened here is the drivers of the American imperialism machine have merely changed, and Donald Trump has easily slipped into this war criminal suit that is being worn by the American empire. And what's happened here is that, yes, you do create refugees, and now you're not even willing to take responsibility for the suffering that you're imposing upon these other countries. I mean, that is incredibly irresponsible. So what I do see is when you're looking at a ban that they say on these 7 countries that are being banned, this was a ban that was actually recommended by Obama's administration. But the thing to understand here as well is that the Obama's administration also had other things that they were proposing around the UN Security Council and trying to ban ballistic missile testing as well. And so Donald Trump picked up on that one as well. I think what we see is these advisors to the Obama administration on their anti-Iranian rhetoric, on their anti-Arab rhetoric, on their anti-Middle Eastern rhetoric, have all picked up the same kind of advisors for Donald Trump. And so they're picking and choosing these same rhetorics. So what makes me believe that the puppet masters for Hillary Clinton and such are the same puppet masters that we're seeing now for this thing that we're calling a president now. And I have to tell you that both of them, neither one of them deserve the right to run. But at this point, we're stuck with a very despotic leader who's acting like a madman. And I got to tell you, the United States needs to be worried about itself. It's creating itself a very terrible image around the world. And at the same time, unfortunately, it's also alienating people more, and it's making people around the world upset with us. And at the same time, unfortunately, I believe the war machine will continue to create blowback, which is what the CIA calls it, by creating more enemies by killing their mothers and fathers around the world.
Speaking about people around, I will allow you to respond. I know you have responded. Let me just add this question on, if you allow me, Mr. Peterson. Many people, when we talk about confusion outside of U.S. borders about this Muslim ban and these 7 countries, Muslim majority countries, mind you, their citizens are not being allowed to enter. Interestingly, it does not include the likes of Saudi Arabia. So if you really are looking to stop terrorists from coming in, most of the hijackers on 9/11 were Saudis. It follows quite logically that then the Saudi Arabia should be on that list. Why isn't the Saudi Arabia on that list, Mr. Peterson?
Well, once again, let me reiterate that this list was not designed by Donald Trump. This list was designed by Barack Obama.
He selectively is picking and choosing
your
Obama
other guest
administration?
Here we have, wait, go ahead, excuse me. The list of countries that were included in this, and it is not a ban, it is really a misrepresentation to call it a ban. There was nothing banned. This is a delay and a closer screening. New rules are being composed now to screen for potential threats. Now, I love a good conspiracy theory that you can snuggle up with on a cold winter's night beneath the fire.
It's not a conspiracy theory. It's called APAC.
And get all frayed. But to somehow think that Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump have some Svengalian puppet master that is pulling each of their chains, well, it makes a good tale
Their
indeed.
advisors
but
are
it's a
also
rather
very
tall
closely
tale
tied to AIPAC.
and becomes humorous after a while.
Okay, so Mr. Peterson, I'm confused though, because you're saying, Mr. Peterson, that you don't accept that Obama and Donald Trump are the same puppet masters. That's fine, but then why would Donald Trump not adopt Obama's, for example, Australia policy, but will adopt Obama's policy towards these 7 Muslim majority countries? I'm confused.
Well, because Obama didn't really have a policy at all. He issued these dire threat warnings.
He had a pro-Israel policy.
Identified a threat and then did absolutely nothing. Excuse me, why don't you go ahead and then I'll continue. But what he did was identify countries and then walk away. Probably went golfing or something. You know, nothing was done to follow up on this. Donald Trump, very responsibly, I believe, and the majority of American people, regardless of what of the tall tales and conspiracy theories that like to be floated about, the majority of the people stand with him and feel safer as a result of this. This is done by
okay. Let's get into specifics if we can, gentlemen. I do apologize for interrupting Mr. Peterson. Mr. Rickard, you know,
sure.
Iran is one of the countries on that list of 7 countries of which citizens have been banned. We've already spoken about this 5-year-old Iranian child who had been detained at Dulles Airport. And now we have, as you said, talk of this ballistic missile test. Paul Ryan even saying he supports sanctions against Iran. Where is this all heading when it comes to U.S. policy towards Iran specifically? Mr. Rickard?
Well, as I've said before, Wesley Clark said in 2007 that the United States was going to attack 7 countries in 5 years. 6 out of those 7 countries have been attacked, and under the plan, the 7th country and the final country was going to be Iran. It's very clear here that individuals like Mr. Peterson, like Donald Trump, all have their sights on Iran. And unfortunately, there is a very good chance that in the next 4 years that we will see tremendous amounts of military warfare and tremendous amounts of suffering in the country of Iran because of the complete totalitarian nature of the mindset of individuals like Mr. Peterson, who would support such a war and who would support such an atrocity of mankind. He certainly did support the Syrian war, and he certainly didn't say anything negative against the Libyan war. The fact is that these guys are all about making money in the military-industrial complex and supporting an expectation of some sort of being better than somebody else and trying to basically spread their ideology to another country. And what we have here is unwanted war criminals that have been basically given the seat again to the American government.
Mr. Peterson, how do you feel about the Trump policy so far towards Iran?
Well, I will tell you, if anyone has listened to what I have said over time, what I have written, and numerous public discussions about this issue, knows that of my high regard for the civilization of Iran, for the people of Iran, for the potential leadership of Iran in a responsible, constructive way,
potential leadership,
interacting with
like
all
another
of their
puppet,
neighbors,
like the Shah, like the Americans put in place.
Well, one interrogator at a time, please, and one question at a time.
Interrogation? You think this is interrogation?
It's
indefensible.
Potential, please. We have the potential now under Donald Trump, one who has constructed magnificent buildings and projects literally throughout the world. We have an opportunity now.
Have you seen his tweets today about what he said about Iran? Have you seen his tweets? Read his tweets, his last 3 tweets today, what he said about Iran, how Iran is on notice.
Is this Is this street encounter language and techniques that you would like to practice? Because shouting back and forth gets us
Mr.
absolutely
Peterson, no,
nothing.
I don't want to get bogged down in those details because we only have 2 minutes left,
Discussing
or under 2 minutes left, gentlemen. Mr. Peterson, from
Sure.
the Iranian point of view, certainly anyone can agree that Donald Trump is being, just like Obama was as well, but a couple of steps ahead, very anti-Iran.
I believe that Donald Trump is being very pro-security for the United States, for the region,
Unbelievable.
for the world. And I believe that, that he is willing, as no other president perhaps in our recent history, to actually sit down with Iran and come up
Mr.
with
Peterson, I'm sorry, time is generally getting the best of us.
Let
me just get a final 30 seconds comment.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rickard, go ahead.
There's an opportunity.
Well, this is once
here,
again, you know, to think that Donald Trump
we
has
should
any
both
kind of
embrace.
opportunity. If he believes that Donald Trump has any opportunity to sit down with Iran, he has absolutely nothing good to say about it. He's jumped in bed with his AIPAC puppet masters, and he's absolutely willing to go to war against Iran at the drop of a hat. So let's be clear that Donald Trump has said nothing in the sense of diplomacy and has said everything in the sense of beating war drums.
Okay, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there at that, and we'll try to continue this conversation with both of you at a later date, but we appreciate both your contributions to this conversation. That was former American intelligence linguist Mr. Scott Rickard, who has been speaking to us live from Tampa, and we were also joined by Congressional Defense Policy Advisor Mr. Frederick Peterson, who was speaking to us live from New York. And of course, viewers, we appreciate you joining us as well. Until next time, good night.